Mine's finished. No, it's working. Okay, cool.
Oh, we were talking for a minute about food, and I made
Mm-hmm.
Josh behaved himself. He had a banana.
Mm-hmm.
I ate Oreos. I opted to not go for the extra cup of tea because I do want to sleep at some point in time tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I got the Oreos, and they're like Oreos with the vanilla shortbread. They have the lemon filling, and we will brook no argument that Oreo cookies might be peak cookie, um, or they're at least like top three. Now I'm not talking about like homemade cookies because that's
Yeah.
like a different echelon.
Chocolate chip
Like,
oatmeal all the way. But
oh, you know what
yeah.
though? And here's okay, homemade cookies, dude. Like, I don't know, some people hate raisin cookie, but a
Mm-hmm.
raisin oatmeal cookie
Mm-hmm.
is like, dude, I will at times take that over a chocolate chip cookie.
Hmm. Oh, like a straight chocolate chip or or a oatmeal chocolate chip.
Either. Like, I
Oh,
love chocolate.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong. I love
yeah.
chocolate. But like there is something just um like oatmeal raisin, especially if you
Mm-hmm.
get like a little brown sugar and cinnamon in the like you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's something so like satisfying
Yeah.
in that. It's like it's eating like a bowl of oatmeal and it's like all that comfort. Like I like
Mm-hmm.
oatmeal. Like I'm
Yeah.
weird. I
Yeah.
like oatmeal with
Why
raisins
is
and
that weird?
cinnamon.
Oatmeal's
I
good.
don't know. No, oatmeal's kind of bland and plain Jane. So
Well, sure, but I mean, obviously you sweeten it, right?
yeah.
That's
Well,
kind of
and
what you
I
do.
also like to get the flavored ones. Like I like
Yeah.
the apples and
Yeah.
the apple and cinnamon
Mm-hmm.
packets.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my favorite. Anyways,
Yeah.
I'm just saying oatmeal cookies. Like a good oatmeal
Yes.
raisin cookie is like S tier for me.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. 100%. 100%. Now, for me, chocolate chips beat out raisins every time, but raisins are not bad. Like they have their own. It has its own place. It's just if they're the choice between the two, I'd choose chocolate chips every time.
and if I go in expecting a chocolate chip and I get a
Hmm.
raisin, I
Hmm.
get it. Like yeah, I'm disturbed at that point in time. Um, but I'm trying to think. Like,
Yeah,
what's your
but
favorite? Like, so it's chocolate chip oatmeal is like your favorite cookie, period.
yes,
Like, bar none.
yes, yes, and
Mm.
and and I've said this multiple times. I'm not picky. I like everything. So just about everything. We typically have cookies for the little fellowship time after church
Mm.
on Sundays. And this past time, my daughter came up to me with this very dark red cookie, and I guess it was just a red velvet cookie. And I'm like, oh, that's
Ooh.
weird to me that you do that to a cookie. So there's definitely some that I like more than others, but I mean anything snickerdoodle, oh those are fantastic.
Snickerdoodles,
Um,
yeah.
you know,
Mm.
so but yes, oatmeal or yeah, oatmeal chocolate chip is definitely at the top of the list for me.
Dude, I think my favorite cookie might be, we call them peanut butter blossoms,
Okay.
and I
Okay.
like, it's
Peanut
like a
butter
peanut
cookies are
butter
great.
cookie,
Yeah.
and then you push a Hershey Kiss into it while
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
warm.
yeah. Hmm.
Or you do like the double peanut butter threat, and you take a Reese cup and you go,
My no. My wife did it with just peanut butter because we actually had some peanut butter cookies given to us, homemade, by one of the elders' wives made it for us, and my wife was munching on them just with a container of peanut butter. She
in
just wanted more
addition to
peanut
the
butter
peanut
on the
butter.
peanut butter
She
cookie. Yeah,
wanted all the peanut butter. I
yes,
respect that.
but
I respect that.
Reese's are like her favorite, so
Dude,
she totally would have gone for
Reese's
that.
candy. Okay, so here's the thing. Reese's chocolate is kind of like mid tier.
Hmm.
And Reese's peanut butter is like okay.
Hmm.
But you put them together, like separately, like by themselves, it's kind of like,
Hmm.
yeah. But you put those two things together, and there is not a candy on the face of the planet that comes close to touching a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Hmm.
Like
Oh wow.
I
Again, I
used to
just like
love
candy, so yeah,
I like candy too.
I like
Like, dude,
everything.
I had a most of a bag of Laffy Taffy, and
Okay.
I just sat there and ate it tonight. And Megan was like, "What are you
Hmm.
eating?" And I was like, Laffy Taffy. And she's like, no thanks, I like my teeth. And I'm like, apparently I don't. I like this. I like this Laffy Taffy. That's what I like. Um, but yeah, I used to like Snickers. Used to be like the king of the candy bars for me.
They were really
Like
good, yeah. Hmm.
they're really good, and I still like them.
Hmm.
Um, the peanut butter Snickers are really pretty excellent.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Nice.
yeah, the
I
Take
know.
Five my is.
Interesting.
Do you know
Interesting.
what a Take Five is?
I've seen them. I can't exactly pinpoint what all is in it.
Um, Pretzel, peanut butter, caramel, drizzled in chocolate.
Okay.
I think there
Okay, that
might be
sounds
some
good.
peanuts in it too. Like
Okay.
they're magnificent.
Okay. Nice.
They're pretty good. Like listen, I love chocolate. But you were saying
Yeah.
something. You were saying something before I really cut you off.
I honestly do. Oh, I don't remember if this is what it was, but this came to my mind with the Reese's is that my wife is very partial to the full size Reese's because she said
Mm-hmm.
with the mini ones the proportions are all thrown off
Yes.
because it's a lot more chocolate than
Mm-hmm.
peanut butter, but the full size actually gets that right.
Listen, I will eat any of them, but she is
Right.
not wrong.
Yeah.
And the
That's
best ones are the peanut butter eggs. For some weird reason,
ah.
peanut butter eggs, which are in stores now,
Mhm.
like have like they are the premium Reese's experience.
Okay.
Like you want Reese's the best it will ever be. It's peanut butter
Hmm.
eggs, and you need to get on that now. Um,
There you go.
mm.
There
But
you
we were
go.
talking about lemon desserts, and
Yes.
I love
Yes.
lemon
Hmm.
desserts. And lemon and poppy, like dude, it's the lemon and poppy seed thing. Like I don't
Hmm.
know what it is. That weird citrusy sweet with that little bit of savory. It is
Hmm.
like one of my favorite. Like, and it's just like it
And
to
the
me. It's
opium
like
too.
yeah,
I'm
it's
kidding.
mild opiates. You will pee if you have to take a pee test for work or for other reasons. You should disclose that you had a poppy seed muffin because you will pee hot.
I watched Seinfeld.
And people will say that's not true, and I'm like, nope, it is 100% true. Um, I don't know from experience. Um, Literally, I don't know. Like I know somebody it
Mhm.
happened to.
Oh
Um,
wow, really?
hmm
Oh man.
I fail. I failed a urine analysis, but that's because I was doing drugs at the time.
Oh, okay, that'll do it.
So it's maybe if I'd been really smart, I would have been like,
Blamed it on the poppy seed.
I would have been like, I ate a whole bunch of poppy seed bread, like tons of it. I wasn't thinking about it. Um,
I had no idea there was marijuana in that poppy seed.
um, I did not. I did not piss off for marijuana. I was a bad boy.
Yeah,
um, I'm not.
I know.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
making a joke, but
No,
yeah.
yeah. It was a long time ago,
No.
and I I don't want to dude. I've been doing this weird nostalgia thing where I'm like looking back at
Hmm.
like all the creepy garbage I did when I was a kid, and like I
Okay.
just want to like go like if you could go back in time and just kick the crap out and maybe you weren't as big a creep as I was. Like I was like I look back at things I did and the ways I hurt people and used people and just
Hmm.
like I was a very unpleasant individual. And I
Hmm.
don't just say that like I was kind of like mean and nasty, but I was just a 42-year-old Nate could put his hands on like 18 to 28-year-old Nate and just thrash the snot out of him for a little bit. Um, I might
Yeah.
just be like, or at the very least, be like, dude, you're gonna hurt so many people. Stop it. Like, or even go further back to like 13-year-old Nate and just be like, dude, like just stop. Just
Hmm.
stop all the creepy, weird, skeevy stuff you're doing. Like, stop being a weird little dirt ball. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. But it's not like I think sometimes like you're reminded of just like how how great a sinner you really are. And so
Yeah.
like sometimes like it's just these moments where you're just reminded of like your lowest points. Like the really disgusting things that you've done in your life that like something I was telling Parker, um I'm pretty sure that when Byron was a baby, there were things that like I never hurt him.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I want to, but like there were times where it's like I was just like I was at my wits end and I would scream and I wouldn't always do it. Like I always tried to do it like away from him, but there
Hmm.
was like one time where there were a couple times where I did not like I couldn't make it like 5 steps to just go into a different room. You
Yeah.
know, I was like just falling apart and I I mourn that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
I mourn that stuff. Like I mourn the way that I treated ex-girlfriends that
Hmm. Yeah.
like um I mourn the way that I treated just my family like
Hmm.
growing up. Like just yeah.
Hmm.
Anyways, I'm not trying to get too weird or
No, 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 you're good. I would say though, especially with children, uh that because I feel like there's so much of me too that's like come out since having kids. Like yeah, just anger manifests itself
yeah.
much more tangibly for me, whereas it wasn't like Samantha, she she said this multiple times that she never heard me raise my voice until we had kids. Now I
Yeah.
do it all the time. Um, so I would say that that is one kind of like silver lining is that you then can model repentance for your kids. Obviously, at Byron's age, it's a little
Yeah.
difficult,
And
but
and I
you'll
don't
have
do
that
it any
opportunity.
more really. Like
Hmm.
I think about even like my dog, like Yuki.
Hmm.
Like I was yelling at Alexa. I was trying to get Alexa to turn on a
Hmm.
timer for me when I came home for lunch,
Yeah.
and it was like the internet was out. And I was like 3 or
Okay.
4 times. I was like, "Alexa, set a timer for 25 minutes." I was like I
Hmm.
thought like I'm going to be louder and it's going to do it.
Hmm.
And it was like, "Oh, the internet's not working." And I'm like, I
Gotcha.
wanted to
Yeah.
be like, "Why didn't you say that the first time?"
Right.
Like
That's lame.
but my dog was like, I'm getting loud and Yuki's like, "Can I go now?" And I was like, "Yes, go outside, you weird dumb dog."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. No, and it's like, yeah, but I just like for some reason it's just like I think about like all the skeevy garbage and I'm just
Hmm.
like, man, I think about like the young man I was and I think part of it too is I'm more on the idea like I wish that I had it's like one of those things where I wish I would have embraced discipline a lot earlier in my
Yeah.
life.
Hmm.
And some of that is like because if I had embraced it earlier, I wouldn't have some of the struggles that I do now.
Sure. Yeah.
So some of it is that. But anyways, that's enough of me boohooing and feeling weird and morose and melancholy.
Hmm.
Going back to the fun bit is that lemon desserts are S tier.
Yeah.
Chocolate is
Yeah.
S tier, and
Mm.
sweets, as a general rule, are just S tier. And if you've got to
Mm.
buy store bought cookies, um, you either get the brand name soft and chewy Chips Ahoy's, which are really good. Chewy Chips Ahoy is a pretty good cookie, or you get Oreos. Anything else is just unacceptable. Like unacceptable. What? So, just weird, quick question, and then we can actually
Hmm.
get into the topic. Favorite candy that isn't chocolate based?
Oh man. I mean, the boring answer is probably something like Skittles. I like Skittles a lot, but the weird answer, is peach rings. I really like peach rings,
Dude, that's not a
but
weird
I like
answer.
everything. So
Peach rings are a great candy.
yeah.
A
Well,
great
thank you.
candy. Um,
I
I
feel like
think
they're uncommon though. Like it's not you don't see them very often.
oh,
So
hmm, I don't know. I see them. I mean, I usually see them when I'm in the candy aisle, but then
yeah.
I'm usually looking for them potentially. Peach
Hmm.
rings is a good pool. I think for me, like favorite non-chocolate candy is the
Hmm.
Albanian gummy bears. Um,
Okay. Actually, I think you've mentioned this before.
those are like the best gummy bears on the face of the planet, bar none.
Sugar free, right?
No, you go full sugar on that. Like, listen, sugar-free gummies are dangerous.
That's what I've heard.
Just I read out loud the review of the Haribo sugar-free gummies, like the one that
Hmm.
was making the rounds. I read that out loud to I think Megan was there. So I think we had company over, and I was howling when I was done with this because it was just like the way that they like that epic that saga. Um,
Hmm.
ruined it. Those things ruined an individual's college career. Um, um, so we never eat sugar free gummies. Um, but um, I think Sour Patch watermelons, like Sour Patch
Okay.
Kids, like the
Yeah.
watermelon,
Yep. Hmm.
those are really good. They do like
Yeah.
a Sour Kids like peach candy too, that I am also a massive fan of.
Hmm. I don't know that I've had them
They're
if they're
pretty
just
good.
peach, but yeah, watermelon's good. Jelly beans are also really good. I mean, they can be
Mm,
terrible. Some can be terrible, but I think of like Jelly
yeah.
Belly. I like a lot.
Yeah. Oh, a bag of Jelly Bellies. Like I'll give myself a stomach ache over that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, dude. Okay. Um, the green Haribo frogs. Um, the gummy frogs. They're
I don't
actually
know
a
anything about
peach
this.
flavored gummy frog. They're like
Okay.
green gummies, and they've got like this white like something. They're like they're green gummy frogs, but then the bottom of the frog has like this white. It's also candy.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, now that's ringing a bell. Oh, but no, that looks. Huh.
dude, I will
Huh.
smash those. Like that might be my favorite one, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Because it combines like
Wow.
I really do like peach candy
Hmm.
and I like gummies. So
Nice.
gummies are like, yeah. So I
Oh.
recommend the gummy frogs, Josh.
Hmm. I'll need it. I'll need to check these out. Apparently, they're kosher and nut free.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
that's good.
awesome. Also, they are very tasty. Um, but let's get into this. Let's get
Okay.
into this.
Okay. Let's do
So
this for real.
and if it's okay with you, I'm going to defer. I'm going to let you lead the conversation because like this
Okay.
was your
Sweet.
find, and I'm gonna. I mean, obviously, I'll riff and we'll have a conversation, but I'm gonna. I probably should have told you before right now, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's okay.
Um,
Yeah, I've got some notes. I think we can.
when I figured that you were probably going to come in this a little more prepared than I was, right? Like, anyways, and we're back. So, and germs, ladies and germs. That one's so dumb, and I love it. Um, I don't know why
Nice.
that amuses me, but anyways, folks, tonight we're going to be talking about digital liturgies, which is not really a book about video games. So you're like, why? Well, this is
Hmm.
primarily a video game podcast. Well, and so why are you guys talking about it? You might be asking that question. I would say after reading the book that I believe there is some overlap. Just I
Yeah.
think with the way that the internet is sort of built, and especially with the way that game design, um, it's this is going to be a broader conversation, but I think part of it is like there are a lot of games, like a lot of the same hooks that are built into sort of like internet thinking and apps and
Hmm.
social media are also present in games. Like, I mean, just a sort of a proof positive of this is Vampire Survivors, or Vampire
Mhm.
Survivor. Is it Survivors or Survivor? I never remember. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Um, I hope it's Survivor, and then I hope he makes a sequel and calls it Survivors, like Alien and Aliens. Um,
Mm. Mm.
but like he was an engineer who worked for Facebook and did the whole like algorithm dopamine kind of thing. So there's hooks here, and so it's going to be in some ways a little bit more of a general conversation, but I think it's in some ways video games can work on our brains and by proxy our hearts
Mhm.
very similarly to um, social media and the internet. But that being said, Josh, um, I'm gonna kick this on over to you at this point in time. Like I feel like I've done a pretty good job of saying like this is why we're gonna talk about it. Since you sort of brought this book to my attention,
Mhm.
I'm gonna just I'm gonna like I'm gonna follow your lead here, man. So
Cool.
where do you want
Cool.
to start?
Nice. Yeah, we've done book, episodes before that kind of go around some of these similar topics, whether it's even just something along the lines of kind of productivity and how that fits into how we tackle our backlogs or how we play video games or things like that. So, yeah, I think we'll kind of touch on some of the similarities. Also, it is Vampire Survivors. It is plural, so maybe they can make a
Missed
prequel.
out,
You
missed
know,
out. Should have
and it'll
called it
just be the single
Survivor,
one.
and then
Yeah.
Survivor's the sequel. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like that one's for free.
he
Like
wasn't
you could
forward
have
thinking like that.
no.
Yeah.
Well, that's because he didn't
Anyways,
have a friend like me.
yeah, there you go. You got a friend in me. Anyways, so digital liturgies. So this book, the subtitle is Rediscovering Christian Wisdom in an Online Age. And it's by Samuel D. James. So kind of the gist of the book, it opens up, and part of what Nate had mentioned earlier on the episode, and he recommended the David Foster Wallace speech. And I full disclosure, I have not listened to that full speech, but I know that idea of kind of the air that we breathe, the water that we swim in as fish, which is the reference that he makes. What is one fish? Some child fishes come to an adult fish, and the adult fish is like, "How's the water, boys?" And the kids are like, What's water? What is that? What are you talking about?" Because they don't even realize what it is that they are swimming in. They don't really, they just take it for granted. What is air? If you don't know, what. So it's kind of looking at uh, the ubiquity of the internet and social media and what it does to us. So the interesting thing to me about this book is that I think we all know that the internet affects us. It's obviously affected our society
Mhm.
that we live in, our culture. And we can readily admit that, but then trying to pinpoint exactly how it works on a personal level is harder to do. And I think
Mhm.
that's a bit of the aim of this book, which, and obviously comes from a Christian perspective as well.
Mhm.
Um, so it's asking how does the internet train us to think primarily? And James I think he does a good job of contrasting the wisdom of, I'd say, like, the wisdom of the Proverbs is a lot of what he pulls from, versus some of what we consider to be wisdom because of the way that the internet works, the internet and social media. So this whole conversation, I'm going to use internet and social media kind of interchangeably. So when I say the
Mhm.
internet, I mean internet 2.0. I mean the social internet, the one that we interact with, not simply, going to a website or, looking up news on the internet. What's that?
Yeah. Well, and I was just gonna say, like, because yeah, there are like technically different things, but like in a
Hmm.
lot of ways, the terms are sort of interchangeable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think it also kind of it plays more towards, like what we're talking about, kind of what we do with this podcast. Um, Thinking deeply about the things that we interact with, but I think kind of that social element to the internet, the way that it's used primarily nowadays, has parallels to video games in general. And so those are some of the things that I'd rather kind of look at in general. And so this book struck me in some of the ways that it, like I said, digs into the way that the internet affects us when we are using it a lot, and it pointed out some things that, I mean, frankly, made me uncomfortable about the way that I use the internet as well. Because again, we all know we probably use it a bit too much. We probably understand we use our phones or we sit in front of screens a bit too much. But what does that actually do to us? We know, like, hey, our culture seems very polarized right now. Does some of that have to do with the way that we interact on the internet, and why? Is it just that anonymity? Okay, but that plays a factor into it, certainly. James digs into one of the things that one of the themes throughout the book. I find as I've listened to it a couple times now is he really digs into not just the anonymity, but the way that we create our personae online, our different personas, plural. Um, it starts to cause us to believe that the way that we present ourselves online, our actual identity is more malleable, that we can be who we want to be and who we say we are, rather than we don't have to be limited by the way that we have been created. So you take an extreme example, with some of the things that our culture is kind of wrestling with nowadays, um and what it, I'll ask the question, what is a woman, something like that. Can men be women, basically? Which is, it would be an absurd question in any other age, but I think in an age where we do a lot of our conversing with other people through digital media, the medium of what we're doing right here on this podcast. I've never actually met Nate in real life.
Yeah.
And so there's only, but of course that's also why we incorporate video and audio into our conversations,
Hmm.
is because we want it to make it at least as close to real life as possible. But that said, the way that the internet kind of trains us, the way that social media kind of trains us to portray ourselves the way that we want to, it also starts to affect the way that we see ourselves. And that was pretty striking to me when I came across that. Um,
Well, and I think you're sort of talking like I think the term that he uses in the book is dislocation, um,
mhm,
where because we are embodied, that
mhm,
inherently, and we were designed to be embodied, that inherently means that you have sort of outside constraints, and so
right. Yeah.
you there are realities that are sort of inescapable. Like you live in the house that you live in, you live in the town that you
Mhm,
live in, you're born a male or a female, like you have to. And what and I what I did think, one of the things that is sort of a broader sort of interesting point is that he does sort of draw the parallel between this sort of the explosion in sort of gender dysphoria and all the confusion
mhm,
surrounding that. And not just on, because I think it would be really easy to sort of like blame social media and everything else, um, and like pressure from peer groups and stuff like that. I think that's part
mhm.
of it. But he also says
Yeah.
like that basically epistemologically, like the way that the internet trains people to think is that
Mhm,
it's sort of rooted in transhumanism, which is like that your body
mhm.
is just a shell, and it and I
Yep.
anyways, like that, it's like that actually sort of reinforces and accelerates a lot, because like the fact of the matter is that um transgender people, that
Mhm,
uh, that situation has been present, has like that sin, that affliction, whatever you want to call it, I don't know,
mhm,
like has been it's not new. It's like
mhm.
there are historical sort of precedents for this thing, And again,
Yeah.
it's always been sort of the outlier. It's always been a
Right.
massive minority. And so there is the issue of like having like an out now there's an outsized voice in these in some social media platforms, but it's the ideology that's permeated by just the way that the internet and social media and the just like online indoctrinates people, where it's
Yeah.
sort of it pushes you further and further into this sort of like radical isolationist kind of like
Yeah.
self-determinist position, like
Mhm.
I shape reality instead of being shaped by
Right.
reality.
Yep.
and
Yep. Yeah.
and that's been an accelerant to just a
Mhm.
lot of things, period. um
Right. Right.
so
There's this sense of one of the things that James talks about is that the expressive individualism that is encouraged online as you create your persona. You're very much encouraged to fill out. This is who you are and present yourself however you want to. You're encouraged to express yourself, and that's how you can become an individual, and that kind of taking from a book that we read together, years and years ago, the James K. Smith, the "You Are What You Love."
hmm
It affects you on a level to where, like you mentioned, epistemologically, where you start to believe that now that you have done that so many ways, it affects you so that you think that you ought to, that now
hmm
the way that you express yourself is actually a part of who you are. Yeah, it's that idea of creating your own identity. And one thing that really stuck out to me, James lays out in this book kind of the steps of the way that the internet has been introduced, and I don't think it's like some secret plot or whatever. But it's interesting to me to think you had to, when the internet was first created, you had to get onto a computer, that took up, half a room, or so
Yeah.
in order
Or that
to
was in
actually
a public
access.
it was in a public library, it was in a school
Yep.
lab, or it was
Hmm.
if you had one at home, it was usually, somewhere sort of like ours was in like sort of we had like a family room upstairs.
Yep.
It was sort of off
Hmm.
the dining room. And
Yep.
it was yeah, it
Yeah.
was
How,
in sort
how
of a
it's a Yeah, a
it's
public thing.
public.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah. And so it was more communal in order to engage with the internet in general.
And
And
you had to go
nowadays,
to it. It wasn't
that's true. Yeah.
that was one of the big distinctions that I thought was really interesting too, is that you had to go to it, whereas
Hmm.
now it is. I thought that was a really sort of prescient point where he's like, and now it's just
Yeah.
like it's ever present. It's like it's in your
Hmm.
pocket.
Right. Right. Now and I think that it's because it's just more convenient that way. But because of its convenience, now that's the way that companies tend to market, is because they know it's just you and your phone. And so they're trying to market directly to you. They are not thinking in a communal way. So what preys upon the way that someone thinks when they're alone? They don't you don't have images of communal life as your kind of primary marketing target. So it's kind of this downhill thing. I say that not to I don't want to paint a picture that, like, oh, all these things have just been put in place. There's this grand conspiracy. No, I think, but the way that it's worked out is such that even accessing the internet, yes, one, it's ubiquitous, but two, it's also a very personal thing. And so that locks into this idea of expressive individualism, that has you thinking you can create your own persona, and that is more real to you than who you are, because now you can access it whenever you want, whenever you feel uncomfortable, whenever you just need to bide your time. You're uncomfortable just because you're waiting somewhere. Well, you can pull out your phone and access whatever you want to. at that time. And so on that hand, it makes us a more impatient people, which is frustrating when it's pointed out. It seems as though the utopian vision would be that you would be doing that for efficiency's sake, right? To get something else done. But we all know that that's often not the case. We pull out our phones and incessantly scroll just so that we don't have to interact with other people, you know? Um,
Well, and I think
so there, yeah.
I was just gonna say too, like it's sort of a bit of a tie to sort of video games is that boredom and
Hmm.
engagement loop where it's like
Hmm.
when you're playing a video game, like there's the sense of progression, the easy dopamine hits,
Hmm.
that constant sort of like escapist power fantasy sort of thing, which doesn't always encourage grit. It doesn't encourage us to
Hmm.
dig in, to persevere. And so much of what the internet does is just sort of like, and again, he didn't talk about this in the book, but it's like one of the, I think the ways that sort of the that we're shaped is that we do sort of demand sort of easy access, easy answers. Like we we don't we don't expect or anticipate or even like dealing with any sort of like roadblocks or you know and it's just like even I think that sort of lays into it. It's like I think frankly a lot of like the problems we see is that people just aren't socially, is that people
Hmm.
just aren't used to you've got it just reminds me of a situation that I'm sort of trying to deal with where it's like you've got somebody who's like basically um like there's generational poverty mindset where it's like
Okay. Yeah.
and even there like stuff like that is reinforced because it's just like it's all there at your fingertips. It's
Hmm.
like, and I don't know. There's something there where I'm just like, even I think, again, it's not to say that those are necessarily bad things, but just part of
Right.
it is understanding that that works on you. That changes your like your expectations. It changes your sort of
Yep.
demeanor, how you interact with people. I would even sort of say like the escalating sort of people as means to an end. That
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
think I see is like because if you're sort of like the ultimate, and even talking about the David Foster Wallace sort of speech, one of the things he points out is like,
Hmm.
it is so easy to sort of like sit in your like default sort of position as I am the center of the universe. And the
Hmm.
internet in its current iteration does a heck like we're already really good at that. Like that's like nobody has to be taught how to think that way, you know?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
the internet actually like doubles and triples down on that the way that like
Yeah.
social media and it and but it also like makes it incredibly fickle. You think about like
Hmm.
when he's talking about like Facebook and he's talking about like get how it started out was like you get comments and then you get likes and I mean you've experienced it too probably. I mean I know I've
Hmm.
experienced it, but like when Facebook was still kind of like fresh, like the interaction and the affirmation and it was like it's like it felt good. And
Hmm.
then and like but even like the low key dread if you like you said something and then somebody had like a negative reaction to it, like I think whether like I just think about like we got the like button and all I ever wanted was a dislike button, and instead what we
Hmm.
got was the like, the happy, the whatever, it's like now we've got like six
Hmm.
different reactions or whatever. But it was just it's kind of like just an interesting sort of proposition there where it's like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned earlier was this idea of like transhumanism. And he talks about that throughout the book as well. Just the idea that we're not limited by our, I would say natural limitations, but not limited by our bodies. I think it's also that we're not limited by, where we are in space and time
Yep.
because we have access to a number of different things. The idea that we're not limited even by our how do I put this? Well, let me take a step back for just a second, because I've talked about a number of times throughout the course of this podcast. I enjoy imbibing in content about productivity and efficiency, because I want to be able to get things done, because I'm a pretty laid back guy, and if I don't have things in place, I can just go with the flow all day and waste my time. However, I do think that when you start going down that road, you have to be careful, especially with digital tools that will begin to teach you that you are able and or ought to be able to handle more than is physically possible. So,
Hmm.
for instance, even nowadays, as technology has ramped up, as we have all these different apps that are available to us, as we can listen to podcasts and audiobooks at 3 and 4 times speed if you really want to, which is crazy to me. I do too, for something I don't have to pay very much attention to. But even that, I have to accept that I'm not going to retain the information as well at 2 times speed. And that's not something that I necessarily want to accept. I would much rather tell myself I can multitask. I can have 15, 20, 25 tabs open on my browser at one time and be paying attention to all these different things, right? I can scroll my Facebook feed and keep up with all my friends all the time. And these are not things, again, that are explicit, but after you begin to use them for a long time, um, it starts to teach you that you ought to be able to handle this. And I know in myself, at least, I'm seeing the cracks in those false promises, where I'm very easily distracted. We talked about that. Hey, now you never have to be bored because you can just pull out your phone when you're waiting. That has created an impatience in me, to where I hate waiting even more now, because it feels like, oh, I shouldn't have to wait, because I always have access to something interesting, even if it's just shallow, stupid entertainment. We're entertaining ourselves to death. That's a whole other part of it, and I think we can tie video games into that as well. Um, but I see my own attention is fragmented a lot of the times. I get so easily distracted. Oh, I'm gonna check that. Where is that Amazon package, or something will just pop up in my brain. I know, where I used to try and find answers back when I was a kid in physical encyclopedias for different things. Now you can just ask Google a question, and so you don't have to retain information.
Hmm.
um, so there's a number of things like that where I think we start to believe the lie that we don't have limitations any longer. And instead, it provides, at least for me, okay, I'll say that anecdotally, but I think it's in general. It creates a low level stress, one that
Yeah.
I may not be doing enough, or this sense, this feeling like, oh, there's something else I should be doing, right? Or
Well,
there's something I'm dropping this ball. I'm not keeping all the balls up in the air, kind of a thing. But what were you gonna say?
it reminds me of what Mark Garcia from the Greystone Institute said a
Hmm.
few years ago. That part of the problem, and part of the anxiety that the internet and modern social media and all, like the 24-hour news cycle, like
Hmm.
part of the problems with that stuff is that in a way it sort of gives us, I want to be careful, but like functionally, like are sort of constantly being plugged in. It gives us sort of a functional omniscience, and that we see
Hmm.
all these things and we know all this stuff and we have all this information at our fingertips. And part of the problem is that when you know things, and we've talked about this several times probably, but like when you know something, information requires action, right? And
Hmm.
frankly, it's like I think some of like the what you're talking about, it's just at its most basic level, it's information overload. Like, you know too
Yeah.
much, you're taking in too much. And so you think like there's this kind of like stress or this like pressure to act on all of it. Whereas when you sort of live, and it's not to say that knowing about things going on in the world or keeping up with friends is a bad thing, but your
Right.
primary, like, you're not designed for to worry about the problems of the world. I think maybe some
Mhm.
people are, um, and can navigate those fears. I
Mhm.
know I'm not one of them. I mean, maybe you might be one of them, Josh, but I think that's part of the problem though too. And so that like
Mhm.
couples with all of the like, and just like the crushing weight, like, it's like there's
Mhm.
of self-determination, right? And I think he doesn't
Yeah. Yeah.
go into this a whole lot, but like when the sort of the message is that you are responsible for figuring out what your life, what your reality, what your truth is, and then manifesting that. And it's like
Mhm.
there's like there's so much in there, like, that frankly needs to be unpacked. And I think it does remind me kind of again of like the echoes of just like a lot of the lies that sort of like that the internet, sort of like social media culture sort of reinforces. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's like it reminds me of like the power fantasy stuff with video games and video game addiction. Like a lot of the reason
Yeah.
people retreat into video games to an unhealthy extent is the very same reason somebody like it is, when you if you boil it down, and I'm not trying to like oversimplify it, but it's the very same like reasons that someone would say, well, I need to be called a woman, because there's
Mhm.
things in reality that you don't want to deal with or that you don't feel are just or whatever, and that self-determination or that self-evaluation feels like I shouldn't have to deal with this. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to, one of those is like I'm just going to retreat from reality altogether. Like video games are
Yeah.
just like I'm just going to play this game, and I'm going to sort of do it.
Mhm.
Where the other is sort of like shaking their fist in defiance at reality. And really, both of those in a way sort of go back even to what the serpent said to Eve, like, you will be as God,
Mhm.
and like you
Yeah.
will be the master of your own fate, you will be in control of your destiny. And both of these are sort of counterfeit answers, like, and again, like,
Mhm.
whereas, and I know that's like a weird comparison, whereas I don't think video games are bad all the time. I do think, you know uh for lack of a better term, mutilating your body and pumping yourself full of hormones, so like, is
Mhm.
not great. Um, there's
Yeah.
almost nothing redemptive about that. Um, in the sense that, like, yeah, and it's just interesting because it's like,
Mhm.
and I think what I also found sort of interesting is that like the pushback, the answer really was like, and he spent a lot of time talking about wisdom,
Yeah.
and cultivating wisdom. And
Mhm.
frankly, I think the three categories he gave for wisdom, practical, um, what was it? Practical, ethical, or moral. Practical wisdom, moral wisdom, and then theological wisdom, which I
Mhm.
think he borrowed from someone else. Those three categories or those three terms. And I thought even there, so much of that really does require us being grounded in, it's even there, it's like wisdom, the definition though that he gave for wisdom, and it's not gonna be a beat for beat, word for word kind of thing, but where he's like, it's
Mhm.
basically looking at reality and sort of approaching reality realistically and sort of
Mhm.
living within reality well. And like,
Yep.
it's that sort of, and I was like, oh, that is like, that wisdom is a right response to the demands of reality on an individual.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it was something he said something along the lines of living along the grain of God's world. the way that God has created the
Yeah,
world, and you're going with the
he
grain of
borrowed
it.
that from
Yeah.
Jamie Smith.
Okay. Okay.
That
Yeah. There you
was
go.
that's Smith's thing. I remember that from
Mhm.
You Are What You Love.
There
So,
you go. There you go.
but but yeah, it's yeah, you're
Mhm.
living in the grain of God's creation that he designed.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah, and so the question really is, and again, we've said this, but I'm going to state it again, is that we're not trying to say that all of, the internet, therefore the internet and social media is all bad, or therefore video games are all bad. No, we're not saying that, but we ought to be mindful of
yeah.
what these things do to us with prolonged exposure. Okay.
Well,
Um
I guess I was
what were
just
you going
going
to
to
say?
say it's like going back to the David Foster Wallace sort of thing.
Mhm.
Like it's the difference between the two fish who's saying like what is water, and the older fish who was
Mhm.
like aware of what was going on around them. And I think like part of his book is just like even there, like part of what he's trying to do with the book is saying like this is the stuff that it's like this is how it's working on you as a human being, as an image bearer,
Yeah.
as a Christian. And like I one of the things I did really appreciate was that he didn't advocate for abstention. Yeah, he
Right.
said like
Yeah.
he was like I don't think that's the answer. And I'm like
Mhm.
good because so many times it's like we just there is that well this thing is bad so I'm just going to retreat from it. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to utilize it. And
Mhm.
it's like the point where it's like even evil parents give their kids good things. Kind of
Mhm.
he made that point. He said that at one point in time. It's like and I think like the fact is like even if there was some like questionable motives at the bottom of like the internet as we know it now, like the reality is that it can be used for good and righteous purposes that go beyond just like,
Yeah.
well, I'm just going to hang out on my favorite discernment blog or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it yeah, so go ahead. I'm I keep
It
jumping in
well,
and
it
cutting you
so
off.
no, you're good, you're good. Along with that idea of living, in the way that conforms to the way that God has created the world. I think one way to look at the question is then how should we interact with these things? Internet, social media. I'd say a blanket way of looking at it because I look at myself and I see, oh yeah, no, I see those negative effects in me. This low level anxiety, this sense of my to do list is never. I can never put things away, like it seems like the pace of life is just too much sometimes, that sense of overwhelm. And I think it largely comes from not being able to find solitude and take things slow. Like trying to force myself to go at a faster pace actually makes it so that I can't slow down. It actually it's counterintuitive, and I see
It's
that
a
in myself.
liturgical effect
Right.
in the sense that it's because and part of like the thing is like he talks about the repetitious nature of so many of these things, and the more
Mm-hmm.
you sort of do something and the more you do something in a particular way, the more it reinforces that. So one of the things that the
Yeah.
internet reinforces is like the scattered kind of like ping pong
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and the like even with the need to and I can't remember if we talked about like if we talked about it on mic or prior to the show proper, but like
Mm-hmm.
I think there are benefits to the sort of the net like sort of brain pattern that the
Mm-hmm.
internet is sort of encouraging or is building in people, whereas
Mm-hmm.
I also think there's strengths in sort of thinking along a straight line for a long time and deeply, and
Yeah.
which is sort of like the mental formation that printed word and books gave us. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in being able to cultivate a sustained attention in a single thing. When
hmm
you talk about the net-like way of thinking of things, that's finding those connections in things that seem to be more disparate, like
hmm
they seem to be very, very different, but you can see connections when you're kind of looking at, I think the way that you read on the internet is generally skimming. It's generally not thinking deeply. you're generally going at a much faster pace, and you're jumping around to other linked articles or linked
And
ideas and things
you're
like that. And
grabbing
so,
points of data. It's just all you're
hmm
doing is you're sort of like, yeah, you're skimming, you're grabbing sort of overviews. Yeah,
hmm
yeah, it's
and yeah, again, that leaves me scattered after a long time.
I,
So, again, back to this idea: are we living in along the same lines of the way that God has created the world, at the way that He's created us? I think the way that we as Christians ought to engage internet, social media, video games, we have to ask: how does this engagement um, conform to reality, or what does it teach me about reality? What can I learn from this to take back into real life? And so I think one, we ought to prioritize um, those interactions that we have online that are more like real life than less like real life, if that makes sense. So the communal aspects of things, I think, ought to be prioritized.
well,
um yeah.
and also I would even say like when we are in online communities, one, you can't
hmm
help but like not always like sometimes it is just very shallow. But I think
right.
to push for depth when it is appropriate and
hmm
like to make it more than just like, I'm gonna poke fun at our community. And I love like
sure.
I love the people in our community, but like it's not just oh we all like video games and Jesus. Like,
hmm
okay, that's cool. That's like not a bad thing to like hang out with, right? And
hmm
hang and sort of gather around. But like in a way that can be very superficial. And frankly, the
hmm
call of Christian living requires us to be a little more invested, a little more communicative, it requires more from us,
hmm
you know.
yeah. 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 No, that's good. I like that. um But yeah, I think, even, yeah, just remembering, it sounds like such a pat answer, right? Remember that the people you interact with online are actual people. They're not just avatars. But when you come at it from the perspective of the liturgy of disembodiment, right? It takes
Yeah.
on a different, it's even more important, because do you really want to teach yourself that you can speak to someone that way? Right? When you shoot off that quick reply, that barbed reply at someone,
Yeah.
do you really want to teach yourself in your own heart that that is the way that you speak to another human being, someone else who has the imago
That
Dei?
that your initial reaction, like it's funny, like kind of dogging myself out a little bit. Like some guy, I can't remember what he said, but it was like one of those things where, oh, there was a post I saw where it was um, sort of shots fired at the similarities in monster design between Dragon Quest and Pokemon, because Power World's in the mail in the
Mhm.
news today, and everybody's like they're ripping off Pokemon, and I'm like okay, and some guy was like, well, in Dragon Quest you never capture anything, and I wanted to say Dragon Quest 4 would like to have a word with you, my friend, um, but I couldn't remember. Is it Dragon Quest 4?
No, it's
Is it?
5.
It's 5.
4 is the
All right,
one where
so
you have, like, a bunch of different characters, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. But I wanted to say Dragon Quest, and granted, you don't capture monsters in 5. They sort of voluntarily join your party. But I wanted to be like
Mhm.
the whole Pokemon part of your party thing was actually pretty like you play Dragon Quest 5, which came out
Mhm.
like a full 10 years earlier than Pokemon. And tell me there isn't a lot of like, like directly lifting material. Um
Sure.
and
Yeah.
even but it was like it was that initial desire to like be a little antagonistic, to take a jab, to
Mhm.
throw a little bit of a punch, so to speak, where it's like, yeah, it's like it. And I think and we could go on, but I think like, and I said to you, I think one of the the strongest, or like the book is very good. It's very strong in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
One of the weakest parts of it though is that he throughout the book, he doesn't just hold your hand and say, and this is how we need to respond to this. He sort of like
Right.
walks you through just like the ideas and the process and possible responses. And so there's things
Mhm.
like building stillness into our lives and sort of like
Yeah.
learning how to read deeply and think
Yeah.
again, sort of like in a straight line down a long path deeply again. Like, and I think that, like I said, he doesn't do a great job of like buttoning that up or really tacking on
Mhm.
additional resources. But I thought like a good, like, what out of this, like for you, are
Mhm.
you sort of like pulling and saying, okay, like I do want to reclaim some of these things. I do want to sort of like disentangle myself from the internet. And I recognize that abstention isn't always necessarily the best answer.
Mhm.
It's an answer, but it may
Mhm.
not be the best one. Um, so what are like some of the things like going for like practices? Because it's also not just about like, oh, I'm going to set these boundaries and these timers and I'm only going to visit these sites. It's a, it's like boundaries are good and helpful, but it's not just about that. It's like it's about establishing better overall, because it's part just like Jamie Smith's book and You Are What You Love, right?
Mhm.
You it's life, human life is rhythmic in the sense that
Mhm.
like the drum beats that we sort of like hit or that we dance to most significantly are that, like, we're shaped by the things we do. We don't just live
Yeah.
in sort of this like intellectual sort of like I just take data in and then it's there's a holistic human experience.
Yep.
And so what do you think, like after reading this book, like what are the some of the things, and again, this is, I think this is going to look different for everybody. Like, and that's
Mhm.
why I think people should read this book, frankly. Um,
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of provocation, like good provocation in there, where he's saying like, hey, okay, recognize that this is sort of the water that you're swimming in, and that you are actually swimming in this water. That
Mhm.
is not just, don't let it just be reflexive. Um, don't just sort of like rip off the mean tweet or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but like, what are some of the things that you're sort of like walking away and you're saying like, hey, this is like for me, it's, I'm still in sort of like the problem, like the sort of evaluation. It's like I definitely need to
Sure. Yeah.
be building like more stillness in. Like one of
Mhm.
the things I've been doing over the last couple of days is just not like, sometimes I will put my earbuds in and it will be podcast for 8 hours.
Yep. Mhm.
One of the things I'm like trying to go back to is just like I don't have something in my ears all the time,
Yeah.
or like I'm not always listening to a book, or what, like sometimes I'm, it's just quiet, and sometimes I'm praying, sometimes I'm just like thinking about the work that's in front of me, and sometimes I don't
Mhm.
know. Sometimes I'm just bored and I'm letting my brain be weird,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
super spooky because my brain's super weird. Um, but
Those places, man.
yeah, but
Um,
for you, what were some of like the like, hey, I want to try and like implement some of the things I'm learning and thinking about here.
yeah, the biggest thing for me, and this was back in December is when I started on it, but even looking towards goals in the new year was to set more rhythms of being able to kind of reclaim my attention span and to
Yeah.
be able to think deeply on a subject at one time in one clip. And so I challenge myself, to read an X number of books over the course of the next year, some of which being physical, in addition to the listening that I do as well. But just to be able to build that back up, because I do find in myself that I yeah, I tend to skim. I tend to, be a lot more scatterbrained. And what I've found in doing that is, and because there are other books that I just don't talk about here on the podcast for one reason or another, whether I don't want to just kind of extend it out. But I've actually been doing pretty good. I've been reading a good amount this month so far. Um, But I was gonna say something and I can't remember where I was going with it, except that what I found is that after a while, in getting back into the rhythm of reading, I found that picking up my phone and scrolling through social media, it's jarring how quickly it happens. And part of that's just the technology. Like, hey, my phone is fast. And you think that that's an automatic good thing. The problem is it's too fast for me to take in information, properly. It's too fast. If what I'm doing when I jump on social media is I genuinely care, genuinely, if I can pronounce that word, if I actually genuinely care about what my friends are doing, like, and I tell myself that's why I'm getting on social media, then I ought to actually take the time to read through what they have to say and not just skim through and jump to the next thing that'll give me, a dopamine hit. That's more shallow and outrageous, that I can latch onto. What's the next bit of news or something like that? Just
Mhm.
scrolling through to find something like that. Um, and it was interesting for me to just kind of pick up my phone one day and just start scrolling as a matter of habit and just be like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this is too fast for me to actually take in anything because I had just been reading previous to that. So that's the primary thing that I've taken away from it. It sounds very just boilerplate of like, oh, be more mindful, but it just I'm coming at it from a different perspective. So even like the games that I'm playing, I want to play not just as a default or as like, oh, I'm tired and I don't want to think, and so I'm just going to play this video game, but actually think through, one, if it is like if it's a deeper kind of experience, which I love 60-hour RPGs when they're really good. Um, if it's something like that, then thinking about what this is actually saying, about humanity, what can I pull from this? What truth is this kind of coming at? Okay, there's that. Or if it's not, a deep kind of game, then recognizing and being mindful that the purpose that I'm playing this is for recreation, not not just um escapism in the negative
Mhm.
sense, not just so I can turn my brain off, but so that I can renew myself and so that I can be ready when I'm done, when it's time to get some work done. But for right now, I can actually relax and spend this time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It
No,
sounds
that's
very
it's
boilerplate, but
well, and that I think that's the thing is that that part of the solution is it's not flashy. It's
mhm.
just
Yeah,
kind of getting into it and doing the work. And
yeah.
so it's yeah, and it's like even like talking to like the idea it's like I mean, and sometimes like here's the thing. Sometimes it's okay to turn your brain off. Like
Hmm.
but like when that is sort of like the default move where it's like I'm just going to get in here, have some mindless fun and sort of be like in and out. Like yeah, you are kind of missing the point. Um
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah. But um I don't know about you, dude, but I am fading fast, and
yeah,
it
cool.
feels like the reality is like we could probably talk about this book for hours,
Hmm.
like really like pick it apart. And if I wasn't so sort of like sleep deprived, yeah, we could probably go on.
No,
But
you're good, man.
no, I just I think there's a lot of meat here, but it's
Hmm.
and I think again like even sort of like what I was saying is like the sort of the weakness is that he doesn't kind of like really have like a bullet where he just lands on it and sort of says and here's like the big picture thing, because like his big
Hmm.
point is like, hey, you know what Christians need to do in order to like navigate technology and like the internet and everything else well. um well, they need to be Christians who pursue wisdom and love wisdom,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is tough, and it's not
Mhm.
sexy. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's It's and so it does require us to reevaluate and think about and our lives, our rhythms, and yeah, and all of it. So
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to it because, like, and I think, like, hopefully for me, February is going to be a bit of a kickstart to sort of reclaim
Hmm.
some of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Um, but
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, I appreciate you jumping into the book. I liked
oh,
it
dude, I
more than I
appreciate
thought I
you
would.
putting it on my radar. Like, it's a fascinating read. Like
Hmm.
I think there's a way to sort of discount it as like it's you are what you love, but for the
Hmm.
technology side of things, because
Yeah.
he hits a lot of the same notes as James Smith. Like,
Yes.
and he quotes Smith several times. And I
Hmm.
think if I had to guess, I'd say Smith is very informative um,
For sure. Yeah.
for him. But I also would say, like, I think he he's beginning to tackle a very broad and kind of difficult problem within the church,
Hmm.
because, like, that's the thing is, like, yeah, this there isn't a one size fits all answer, because it's we all need to exercise wisdom in different ways. That's
Right.
I don't know. Hopefully I'm making sense, because I feel like I'm fading here pretty quickly. But um
Cool.
so yeah,
Well,
thanks for, like I said, thanks for putting this on my radar, dude. I'm definitely this is going to be a book that I think I sort of wrestle with for a while, and that
mhm.
after my brain is sort of more conditioned to the thinking in a straight line deeply,
Mhm. Yeah,
I'm
I
looking
like
forward
that.
to coming back and just, like, reading through the book and really wrestling with the content again, and
Mhm.
seeing what else I can sort of extract it. I think it's really good. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, once again, if you guys want, if you're interested in checking it out, it's called Digital Liturgies, rediscovering Christian wisdom in an online age, and that is by Samuel D. James. Both of us would recommend that you
yeah,
listen to it. If any of this sounds like something that you're going through, obviously it's not the case with everyone. There's some people who are much more disciplined than I. That it might not be that big of a deal, but for me, it was a good little wake up call
yeah,
of why I was experiencing some of the things that I was, where I never felt like I was getting enough done. Um,
yeah,
Part of that self imposed, you know,
yeah.
like uh, yeah. So, anyways, that good discussion. Before we head out, we do have just a couple more forms that we would like
Hmm.
to fill out because this is not our final form. The first of which is just a shout out to our community. I would like to this week shout out to Mr. Alternate. He has a project, a musical project. It's called Project
Mm.
Hopeless, with a question mark at the end. Project Hopeless? Does that sound more like it was a question? And it's just really cool. It's about 20 minutes long, a number of different tracks that he has composed and put together, with the idea of it being, are you struggling, basically, are you struggling in life, because there's one who can help you, that's pointing you towards, you're not whole in yourself, and this project is to point towards Christ. He uses a number of different scriptures throughout it, and when I say that, that can even come off kind of cheesy, but I think he does it in a really tasteful way as well. So anyways,
Yeah,
alternate, way to go, dude. That's a super cool project. I'm going to link that in the notes as well.
yeah. That is pretty cool. Um, I don't know that he's released any music, but I did want to offer a bit
Mhm.
of a shout out to Arcone, or
Okay.
Arc One. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. I would say it Arcone, just reading it sort of phonetically.
Hmm.
Um, but has been in the server for a little bit at this point in time. Um, this really kind of appreciate the a bit of the steadier hand, steadier voice
Hmm.
within the server. Even And I'll tell you what, um, the story of how he met his wife is pretty wild. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
and
And that he even
the
shared it with us. It's super
yeah,
cool.
and that he shared it with us, especially knowing how much like I kind of like despise Sonic. But yeah, it's just like that was a really cool story, and I was like, oh, that I'm super appreciative of you, Ark. I think like I'm glad sort of seeing you in the Discord and seeing you sort of interact and be a little more present. I think that's pretty cool. So shout
Mhm.
out to you.
Yeah. Way to go, man. Way to go. After our shout outs, let's see. We've got some challenges that we'd like to kind
Hmm.
of pick up on. We like to challenge each other in different things. I for me, and I know last time we talked, I didn't really say anything in particular. It was kind of just continuing on in the pattern that I was moving forward in. But maybe this is another shout out. I don't know. In the Discord, we were talking about memorization, scripture memorization. And that's something I need to start incorporating as well. And funny enough, I feel like when we first started incorporating challenges, part of that was scripture memorization.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just challenge by the next time that we have an episode here. I'd like to have put in place a regular routine of memorization, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
No. Yeah. No. That's a not a bad thing. I think that's a pretty good challenge. Um, Seeing as how I'm going to be taking February off from video games,
hmm
I'm really like I'm kind of coming back to it, and it's like I just I need to journal. Like I think for
okay.
me it sort of helps build those that more linear kind of like again the deep thinking along a straight line for long periods of
hmm
time. That
Yeah.
stillness, that sort of like and frankly like yeah, just sort of like co-signing. I don't know that I have an app that I use to help me with memorization. And maybe instead of skipping the notifications, I should actually just use it from time to time. Um, it's like
Yeah,
one of
I know
those
how that
things.
is. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess we do have we are throwing a bit of a curveball at people. So we've done the well, frankly, it's your little bit there, but um, the the like you have a question.
What
Yes,
is your quest, Shun?
yes,
That
that
what you're
segment.
talking about? What is your
That's the
question?
thing. Yes,
Yes.
yes. Way to. I was trying to tee you up, and I couldn't tell if I
I'm
just sort of
sorry.
dropped the ball or if you just left me hanging. Either which way that cuts. I'm feeling a little burned by it. No,
Oh
it's fine.
no.
But yeah, the what is your question
Mhm,
segment here. Um, for a while, what we were doing is the last episode of every month, we would pick a question, and then we got to the point where it's instead of us running you guys down, we said like, hey, what we're gonna do is say like, we read your question. If you want your $5, reach out to us.
mhm,
And we didn't get a lot of follow up, and so it's I don't know what's up with that. What we're going to do is in order to make the stakes like a little higher is we're going to do a drawing twice a year for
mhm,
a $25 gift card to your particular outlet of choice. But the way that's going to work is like every basically like if you ask a question and we read it for the segment, that gets you an entry into the drawing. So,
mhm.
and we're not gonna like if we get like two or three banger questions from like an individual, they've got two or three entries. So we just wanted to kind of throw that out there. We're revamping this segment because we do kind of like it. It is fun.
Yeah,
It gives us something to
yeah.
riff on for a minute. And but
I
anyways,
love it.
so the first question
Mhm.
for the new the revamped.
What is your quest, Shun?
uh, Patrons, if you watch the video feed, you will get what was going on there. Um, but it was amusing. The first question to be sort of to earn an entry comes from Paul, and he wrote in the Discord on the what is your question uh, channel within our server. But he wrote this: everyone talks about remakes of games as though that goes well even half the time, but we all know that 2D games are superior. Well, that's that's an opinion, Paul. It's not completely without merit, but also, yeah. Anyways, what modern 3D games would you remake into 2D SNES games?
Mhm.
Um, Boy,
Yeah.
howdy. Do you have an answer for this one? Because
I
I need like a minute.
I do. And again, this kind of comes as a boilerplate, like, oh, well, of course you'd say that kind of a thing, or what are you talking about? Okay. So my answer is Bloodborne. However, when I say that, you think, oh, they've already made Salt and Sanctuary, they've already made even Hollow Knight, something like that. Like, what are you talking about? It's already been done. Yes, it has, but it has not been done in an overhead perspective, or a perspective like the A Link to the Past or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. That is the version that I'm thinking of, is not necessarily 2D like side scrolling, but 2D in the sense of an overhead. So you're still dodging, you're using different
Mm-hmm.
weapons and things like that. Something a little bit like slightly more akin to something like a Hades, along those lines. Um, but that's more, I was going to say more weapon based. I mean, Hades is pretty weapon based, but one that has you using those dodge rolls, a lot, like you do
Mm-hmm.
in Bloodborne, and parrying and things like that. So that would be my answer, is something, not that it, I don't think it's fully been done before. There's some things that have touched on it, maybe like a Hyperlight Drifter is kind of along
Mm.
those same lines. But something that is very boss based, like Bloodborne is, I think could be super cool with an overhead perspective.
Yeah, no, that is pretty cool. Just trying to think, like, what would be kind of fun. And
Hmm.
it's kind of like, but they one of the more successful sort of series of remakes that has come out. Because Paul's right, a lot of remakes do not end well. Um,
Hmm. Right.
but if we could get like a 2D Resident Evil, like 4, or just like one of
Okay.
like the Resident Evil games, like some sort of 2D. But like the problem I'm having is like, do you go for top down, or do
Hmm.
you go for like more of a side scroller? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe you sort of do like a screen based brawler type thing, like River City Ransom, Resident Evil Ransom.
That would be very interesting. Huh. Yeah, that
That
opening that
actually,
opening scene would be pretty cool.
dude, that actually, when I think about it, would be kind of like I think Resident Evil and sort of a River City Ransom sort of like layout would actually be
Mhm.
kind of dope now that I'm thinking about it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel SMRT. Um, but yeah, but yeah,
It's
so
all coming together.
like I said, that's our first question, sort of moving
Mhm.
into the new system, and yeah, I think that's a good place to sort of like start to land the plane. But
That's
Josh,
awesome.
we have, well, you sound like you were gonna say something, so don't let me cut you
Yeah,
off.
I was just gonna say that I thought those were some pretty good answers, but we'd love to hear your answers as well, because I'm sure there's tons of stuff that we didn't think of. Here, I mean, whether it's something about the digital liturgies, if you read it and you've got something you want to reach out about and continue that conversation, or if you have a game that you think would make a really cool 2D demake, we'd love to hear it. And there's tons of ways you can get in touch with us. all of our social media and personal contacts and stuff like that, you can find at our link tree, which is just linktree.com/the backlog breakdown.
Mm, yes. Well, I don't have anything clever to say, but it is very late.
Mm.
I am very tired, and I think this has been a very good conversation. And
Yeah.
now that I have made my brain work harder than it has in a number of days, uh, I think I need to sort of just like land the plane. But I think,
Sure.
Josh, thank you for the great conversation here, friend. Thanks for, again,
Yeah.
putting the book in sort of like on my radar. And I'm glad that we did this. But that being said, we've done the things. And until next time, what should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.
Yes. Now go to bed.
Hmm. Do it. Hey,
Go to
do
bed.
it.
Do it.